Hey guys, are you ready for some more reading? I see a Bobby! Hi, sweetheart. Let me see. It still won't give me a category. That is annoying. How is the Bobby? You're working? Oh, well then it's good that I'm gonna read for you. Right? Are you guys ready? Hi, see you, Simmons. Hi, Simmons. Excuse me, guys.
Pika pika. Choo!
Aw, J Cliff! Coming in with a raid! 3 days in a row! Oh my gosh! Hi, sweetheart. How are you, dear? You're good? That's good. What were you doing today? In your stream? Thieves Guild quest. Nice. Hi, Simmons. Hi, sweetheart. I'm so happy you're here. Dude, started early. Oh. Ay. Ay, ay, ay. The law is here already. Jesus. How have you been? Haven't seen you in a while. I'm really good, sweetie. I'm really good. Yeah, I know. It's actually because of you and I started up reading again. I know you guys loved it. Yeah. I love you guys so much. And I know you know that. Yeah, I know you missed yesterday's. But that's why I've been pinging you guys. So you could see it. I know. I know you do. I have you a special place in my heart, you too. And how have you been, sweetie? I've been talking to your in-game, but not so much you. I haven't been able to catch you in-game. Been way too busy lately. I'm hoping things calm down, but it doesn't look like it. Oh no! But hey, at least I'm busy. Gotta be positive. Yeah, that is the best way to look at it. How's the company going? I hear you finally got the approval to go forward. Slow but slowly getting there? Yeah. Well, if anyone is gonna make it, it's gonna be you guys. I have the biggest faith in you guys. Yeah, he did. Been open for a month and a bit, taking a long time to get everything up, website products. Yeah, I know. But guys, if there's anything I can do to help you guys, just let me know, okay? I suck at anything technology, so I'm happy yours an ace at it. Oh, sweetheart. Just let me know if you want some promo through me or something. Okay. I don't mind doing that. No, 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 no. I don't understand, Mew, how you from the far end of the apartment knows as soon as I put down my pen, you come like a shot out of a cannon. Oh well. Giddy ears, I suppose. Alright, let's get cracking. Let's get reading. Oh, you're so sweet. No, but I really mean it. If you want me to help you advertise for the company, let me know, okay? Hi, Pripsy. Hi, sweetheart. And since Pripsy is here and Craig is here, can one of you give Jacob a shout out, please, for the raid? Hi, Riven. Hi, sweetheart. Oh, all my favorites are here. Boop boop. Or no, I'm gonna do it. There we go.
Yes! Yes!
There we go. I just didn't do it in the beginning because we weren't that many. So, but now there's more. So, justifies it. Wait, I did it again? Ah! Spoony! I just slept. 2.5 hours. Before stream. Yes. I will explain, but I'm gonna do the shout out again. So now it's working.
Yes! Yes!
With a link. And then we have the ever so go to bed.
Yes!
Tony.
Yes!
Go check them out, guys. Drop them a follow. And you laugh. Only 2.5 hours. I will say this. I went to bed straight after raid. I have to call the raid early last night because I had a huge stomach cramp. Around 11:30. No, not 11:30. 10:30. So I slept 5 hours. Got up at 6. Got the kids ready for bed. And after that, that is where I slept 2.5 hours. So I did sleep. A normal sleep. I think it's what others call a nap, but I don't nap. I sleep. So, but guys, we have a book to read. And we have reached chapter 11. Mama Kay crossed her legs in the absently provocative way that only a veteran courtesan could. Some people fidgeted habitually. Mama Kay seduced habitually. With a figure most of her girls could only envy, she could pass for 30. But Mama Kay was unashamed of her age. She'd thrown a huge party for her own 40th birthday. Few of those who told her she outshone her own courtesans had been lying. For Guinevere, Karina had been the courtesan of an age. Durso knew of a dozen duels that had been fought over her, and at least as many lords had proposed to her. But Guinevere, Karina would be chained to no man. She knew too well all the men she knew. He really does have you nervous, this Asos, doesn't he? Mama Kay said. No. Liar, Mama Kay smiled. All full red lips and perfect teeth. What gave me away? Durso asked. Not really interested. He was nervous, though. Things had spun suddenly out of control. You were staring at my breasts. You only look at me like I'm a woman when you are too distracted to keep your guard up. She smiled again. Don't worry. I think it's sweet. Don't you ever stop? You're a simpler man than you like to think, Durso Blint. You really only have to... Oh, sorry. You really only have 3 refugees when the world overwhelms you. Do you want me to tell you what they are, my big, strong, wet boy? Is this the kind of thing you talk about with clients? It was a cheap shot. Moreover, it was the kind of comment a whore would have been hit with enough times that she was well armored against it now. She didn't even blink. No, she said. But there was a rather pathetically endowed baron who liked to have me pretend I was his nursemaid. When he was naughty, I'd... Spare me. It was a loss to have her stop, but she'd had gone on for 10 minutes and not skipping a single detail. Then what do you want, Durso? Now you're staring at your hands again. He was staring at his hands. Guinevere could be more trouble than she was worth, but her advice was always good. She was the most perceptive person he knew, and smarter than he was by a long shot. I want to know what to do, Guinevere. After a long moment of silence, he looked up from his hands. About the boy? She asked. I don't think he has it in him. When Athos came around the corner, Rat was sitting on the back porch of the ruin the guild called home. Athos' heart seized at the sight of the ugly boy. Rat was alone, waiting for him. He was spinning a short sword on its point. Spots of rust interplayed with the winking of the waning moon on bright steel as it spun. In this unguarded moment, Rat's face seemed as mutable as the spinning steel. One moment the monster Azoth had always known, the next moment an overgrown scared child. Azoth shuffled forward, more confused and frightened by that glimpse of humanity that soothed. He'd seen too much. He came forward through the stench of an alley that the whole guild used as their toilet. He didn't even care to watch where he put his feet. He was hollow. When he looked up, Rat was standing, that familiar cruel grin on his lips, the rusty sword pointing at Azoth's throat. "That's far enough," Rat said. Azoth flinched. "Rat," he said, and swallowed. "No closer," Rat said. "You've got a shiv. Give it to me." Azoth was on the verge of tears. He took the shiv from his belt and held it out, handle first. "Please," he said. "I don't want to die. I'm sorry. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't hurt me." Rat took the shiv. "I'll give him that he's smart," Durso said, "but it takes more than intelligence. You've seen him here with all the other guild rats. Does he have that?" He snapped his fingers, unable to find the word. "Most of them I only see in the winter. They sleep on the streets the rest of the year. I give them a roof, Durso, not a home." "But you've seen him." "I've seen him." She would never forget him. "Gwynwyr, is he cunning?" Rat tucked the shiv in his belt and patted Azoth down. He found no other weapons. His fear dissolved and left only exultation. "Don't hurt you?" he asked. He backhanded Azoth. It was almost ridiculous. Azoth practically flew from the force of the blow. He sprawled in the dirt and got up slowly, his hands and knees bleeding. He's so small. How did I ever fear this? Azoth's eyes bled fear. He was crying, making little whimpers in the darkness. Rat said, "I'm going to have to hurt you, Azoth. You made me. You've made me. I didn't want it to be this way. I wanted you with me." It was all too easy. Azoth had come back to the guild already destroyed. Rat didn't like it. He wanted to do something to seal Azoth's humiliation. He stepped forward and grabbed Azoth's hair. He pulled him up to his knees, enjoying the little cries of pain the boy gave. He owed what would come next to Neff. Rat didn't particularly like boys more than girls. He didn't see much difference. But Rat never would have thought of this as a weapon if Neff hadn't told him how much it broke a person's spirit to be forced. It had become one of Rat's favorites. Anyone could make a girl scared, but the boys in the guild feared him more than they had ever feared anyone. They looked at Bim, or Wheeze, or Potter, or Jarl, and they melted. And the more he had done it, the more it stirred him. Just looking at Azoth now on his knees, eyes round with fear, made Rat's loins stir. There were nothing like watching the fire of defiance roar high and then quickly or over many nights, die, flare up again, and die forever. A wet boy has to lose himself, Durso said. No, abandon himself. To be a perfect killer, he has to wear the perfect skin for each kill. Grinweir, you understand, don't you? She recrossed her long legs. Understanding is what set courtesans apart from whores. Oh, I'm so sorry. My throat is something. I get under the skin of every man to walk through my doors. If I know a man, I know how to please him. I know how to manipulate him so that he'll try to buy my love and become competitive with the others trying to do the same thing, but not become jealous of them. A wet boy has to know his debtors like that, Durso said. And you don't think Azoth can do that? Oh no, I think he can, Durso said. But after you know a man or a woman like that, after you wear their skin and walk a few miles in it, you can't help but love them. But it's not real love, Grinweir said quietly. And when you love them, that's the moment a wet boy has to kill. And that's what Azoth can't do? He's too soft. Even now.
I love you.
Oh my gosh. Hi, Octavian. Hi, sweetie. Sorry to interrupt. No.
Loctavian cheered Dex 150. Hello, sorry to interrupt.
Octavian. Hi, sweetheart. Oh, let me give you a shout out, dear. Guys, we have Octavian here. Oh my gosh.
Yes! Yes!
Go check him out. He's an amazing streamer. Hi. What have you been up to? It's late for me, so figure a cozy reading stream was perfect and happy to be able to stop in. Aw, you're most welcome, dear. Well, then settle in. And let's get you even more sleepy. He's too soft. Even now. Even after what happened to his little friend. Even now. You were right. Azoth sat through his tears. He looked up at Rat standing over him, moonlight throwing his shadow over Azoth. I knew what you wanted, and I wanted it too. I just couldn't. But I'm ready now. Rat looked down at him, a faint light of suspicion blooming in his eyes. I found a special place for us. Azoth stopped. But it doesn't matter, we can do it here. We should do it here. Rat's eyes were hard, but unreadable. Azoth stood slowly, holding on to Rat's hips. Let's do it here. Let the whole guild hear us. Let everyone know. His whole body was shaking, and there were no way to hide it. Sorry, something's wrong with my voice today. Revulsion was arcing through him like lightning, but he kept his face hopeful pretending his trembling was pure naive uncertainty. I can't let him kill me, anything but. If he considered anything for another second, he was lost. Hi, Hirsch! Asa reached a trembling hand up to Rat's neck and stood. Then stood on tiptoe and kissed him. No, Rat said, slapping him. We do this my way. To ply this trade, a man has to value nothing, has to sacrifice. Durso trailed off. Everything? Guinevere asked. Like you've done so well? My sister might have words about that. One does that because I didn't, Durso said. He wouldn't meet Guinevere's gaze. Out the window. Night was just beginning to lose its hold on the city. Looking at Durso there, his hard, pockmarked face glowing yellow sorrow in the lamplight, Guinevere softened. So you fell in love, Durso. Not even wet boys are immune. Love is madness. Love is failure. I lost everything because I failed. And what do you do if Asos fails? Guinevere asked. I let him die, or I kill him. You need him, she said gently. You told me yourself that he'll call a Kakari to you. Before Durso could say anything, there was a knock at the door. Come, Mama Kay said. One of Guinevere's maids, obviously a former courtesan herself, now too old for the brothels, poked her head in the door. There's a boy here to see you, milady. His name is Asos. Show him in, Guinevere said. Durso looked at her. What the hell is he doing here? I don't know. Guinevere was amused. I suppose that if he's the kind of boy you can mold into a wet boy, he can't be without certain resources. Damn, I left him not 3 hours ago, Durso said. So I told him I'd kill him if I saw him without proof. Excuse me. You know I can't make idle threats, Durso sighed. You might have been right, but it's out of my hands. He's not here for you, Durso. He's here to see me. So why don't you do your little shadow thing and disappear? My little shadow thing? Now, Durso. The door opened and a bleeding, wretched boy was shown in. But even beat up as he was, Guinevere would have picked him from 1,000 gill rats. This gill rat had fire in his eyes. He stood straight, even though his face was abraded, his mouth and nose dripping blood. He looked at her unabashedly, but was either young enough or smart enough that he looked at her eyes rather than at her cleavage. You see more than most, don't you? Mama Kay said. It wasn't a question. He didn't even nod. He was too young to be mocking her tendency to state questions. So there was something else in that flat stare he was giving her. Of course. And you've seen something terrible, haven't you? Athos just looked at her with big eyes, trembling. He was a picture of the naked innocents that died every day in the Warrens. It stirred something in her, that she thought long dead. Without so much a word, she knew she could offer the boy a mother's arms, a mother's embrace, a safe place. She could give a refuge even to this child of the Warrens, who'd probably never been held in his life. A soft look, a touch on his neck, and a word, and he would collapse into her arms and cry. And what will Durso do? Wanda had barely been dead 3 months. He'd lost more than lover when she died. And Gwenwyr didn't know if he'd recover. Will he understand that Asa's tears don't make him weak? To be honest with herself, Gwenwyr knew that holding Azoth wouldn't be just for Azoth. She couldn't remember the last time she'd held someone who hadn't paid for the privilege. And what will Durso do if he sees real love now? Will it make him be human? Or will he tell himself Athos is too weak and kill him, rather than admit that he needs him? It all took her just a second to read the boy and weigh her options. There were too much at stake. She couldn't do it. So, Azoth, she asked, holding her arms under her breast, who'd you kill? The blood drained from Azoth's face. He blinked as fear suddenly cleared his eyes of the tears that were threatening. First kill too, Mama Kay said. Good. I don't know what you're talking about, Azoth said, too quickly. I know what a killer looks like. Her voice was sharp. So who did you kill? I need to talk to Durso Blint, please. Where is he? Right here, Blint said, behind Azoth. Azoth flinched, and since you found me, Blint continued, someone better be dead. Azoth looked at Mama Kay, obviously wondering if he could speak in front of her. He is. Where's the body? Blint demanded. It's in the river. So there's no proof? How convenient. Here's your proof, Azoth shouted, suddenly furious. He threw what he was holding at Durso. Durso snatched it out of the air. You call this proof? Durso asked. He opened his hand, and Mama Kay saw he held a bloody ear. I call it an ear. Ever known a man to die from losing an ear, Gwen? Mama Kay said. Don't you put me in the middle of this, Durso Blint. I can show you the body, Azoth said. You said it's in the river. It is. Durso hesitated. Damn you, Durso. Go, Mama Kay said. You owe him that much. The sun sat fully above the horizon when they arrived at the boat repair shop. Durso went in alone and came out 10 minutes later, rolling down a wet sleeve. He didn't look down at Azoth as he asked, Son, he was naked. Did he? I got the noose around his foot before he could. I killed him before. In cold and distant tones, Azoth told him everything. The night was fading like a bad dream. and what he remembered doing, he couldn't believe he had done. It must have been someone else, as he told his story. Blint looked at him in a way no one ever had before. It might have been pity. ASOS didn't know. He'd never seen pity before. Did Dolgo make it? ASOS asked. Durso put his hands on ASOS' shoulders and looked into his eyes. Hi, Lance. I don't know. She looked bad. I got the best person I could find to try to save her, kid. Blint looked away, blinking. I'm going to give you one more chance. Another test. ASOS' shoulders slumped. His voice was flat, deflated. He couldn't even spare the energy for outrage. You can't. I did everything you said. No more tests. I'm giving you one more chance to reconsider. You've done everything I asked. But this isn't the life you want. You want off the street. I'll give you a bag of silver and apprentice you to a Fletcher or a herbalist on the each side. But if you come with me, you trade everything for it. Once you do this work, you'll never be the same. You will be alone. You will be different. Always. And that's not the worst of it. I'm not trying to scare you. Well, maybe I am, but I'm not exaggerating. I'm not lying to you. The worst of it, kid, is this. Relationships are ropes. Love is a noose. If you come with me, you must forswear love. Do you know what that means? ASOS shook his head. It means you can bang as many women as you want, but you can never love one. I won't allow you to ruin yourself over a girl. Durso's voice filled with violence. His hands were claws on ASOS' shoulders. His eyes, predator's eyes. Do you understand? What about Doll Girl? ASOS asked. He must have been tired. He knew mentioning her was a mistake before he finished the question. You're 10, 11 years old? You think you love her? No, too late. I'll let you know if she lives. But if you come with me, ASOS, you will never talk to her again. You understand? You apprentice to my Fletcher or the herbalist. You can see her as much as you want. Please, kid, take it. This might be your last chance for happiness. Happiness? I just don't want to be afraid anymore. Blint wasn't afraid. People were afraid of him. They whispered his name in awe. You follow me now, Blint said, and by the night angels you belong to me. Once we start, you become a wet boy or you die. The Saccage can't afford to do it any other way. Or you stay, and I'll find you in a few days and take you to your new master. Blint stood and brushed his still damp hands, as if washing them off the matter. He turned abruptly and strode into the shadows of an alley. Stepping out from the niche he had been standing in, Asos looked down the street toward the guild home. 100 paces away. Maybe he didn't need to go with Blint now. He'd killed Red. Maybe he could go back and everything would be alright. Go back to what? I'm still too little to be the guild head. Jalil still dying. Jarl and Dolgo were still both maimed. There would be no heroes welcome for Azoth. Roth or some other big would take over the guild, and Azoth would be afraid again, as if nothing had ever happened. But he promised me an apprenticeship. Yes, he promised. But everyone knew you didn't trust adults. Blint was still confusing. It didn't sound right how he talked about Dolgo. But just now Azoth had seen something in the wet boy. There was something in him that cared. There was something in the legendary killer that wanted the best for Azoth. Azoth didn't believe that Dolgo was worthless just because she wasn't pretty anymore. He didn't know if he could kill again. He didn't know what Blint would do to him or why. But whatever that something was that he had seen in the wet boy, it was far more precious to Azoth than all his doubts. Down the street, Jarl stepped out of the guild home. He saw Azoth, and even from that distance, Azoth saw him smile, white teeth brilliant against his Ladatian skin. From the blood on the back porch and Rad's absence, they must have guessed that he was dead. Jarl waved and started hurrying toward Azoth in the dazzling sunlight. Azoth turned his back on his best friend and stepped into the shadow's embrace. Hi, Ginger. Hi, sweetheart. Chapter 12. Welcome home. Master Blint's voice was tinged with sarcasm, but Azoth didn't hear it. The word home held magic. He'd never had a home. I'm good. How are you? No, that's my tea. Not something you to drink, kitty. Not the best. Going to doctor soon. Need to fix mental health. Well, I hope everything will go well for you, dear. There saw Blind's house, crouched deep in the warrens underneath the ruins of an old temple. Athos stared in open wonder. From the outside, it looked like there was nothing here, but Blind had several rooms, none of them small. You'll learn to fight here, Blind said, locking, unlocking, and relocking each of 3 bolts on the door. The room was wide and deep, and crammed with equipment, various targets, pads filled with straw, and every kind of practice weapon, beams suspended above the ground, strange tripods with wood appendage, cables, ropes, hooks, and ladders. And you'll learn to use those. Blind pointed to the weapons lining the walls, each neatly outlined in white paint. There were weapons of every size and shape, from single-edged daggers to enormous cleavers, blades straight or curving, one or two-edged, one or two-handed, with different colors and patterns of steel. Swords with hooks, notches, and barbs. Then there were maces, flails, axes, warhammers, clubs, staves, polearms, sickles, spears, slings, darts, garrots, short bows, long bows, crossbows. The next room was just as amazing. Disguises and equipment lined the wall, each painstakingly outlined. But here there were also tables covered with books and vials. The books bristled with bookmarks. The jars covered a huge table and were filled with seeds, flowers, leaves, mushrooms, liquids, and powders. These are the base ingredients for most of the poisons in the world. As soon as Mama K teaches you how to read, you'll read and memorize most of what is in these books. The poisoner's art is an art. You will master it. Yes, sir. In a couple of years, when your talent quickens, I'll teach you to use magic. Magic? Azoth was feeling more exhausted by the second. You think I accepted you because of your looks? Magic is essential to what we do. No talent, no wet boy. Azoth started to totter, but before he could collapse, Master Blind grabbed him by the back of his rag tunic and guided him to the next room. There was only one pallet, and Blind didn't set him on it, but guided him instead to a spot by a small fireplace. First kills are hard, Blind said. He seemed to be speaking from far away. Sometime this week you'll probably cry. Do it when I'm gone. I won't cry, Azoth vowed. Sure. Now sleep. Life is empty when we take a life. We aren't taking anything of value. Wet boys are killers. That's all we do. That's all we are. There are no poets in the bitter business, Blind said. He must have left while Azoth slept, because Athos now held a sword small enough for an 11-year-old in his fist, feeling awkward. Now, attack me, Blind said. Oh, Jay! Oh my gosh, OG, thank you so much for the tier 1 sub. You are an absolute sweetheart. Thank you. Oh, sweetie, let me give you a shout out. And I'm really sorry that you guys can actually hear when I'm drinking my tea. It's not good.
Yes! Yes!
Go drop OG the Assassin a follow, guys. He's an amazing Rocket League player. Now attack me, Blint said. What? The side of Blint's sword smashed into Azor's head. I order, you obey. No hesitations. Got it? Yes, sir. Azos climbed to his feet and picked up the sword. He rubbed his head. Attack, Blint said. Azos stared wildly. Blint deflected his blows, or stepped to one side, so that Azos fell over from the force of his own swings. All the while, Blint spoke. You aren't making art, you're making corpses. Dead is dead. He parried quickly, and Azos' blade went skittering across the floor. Grab that. Blint walked after Azos and engaged him again. Don't play with your kills. Don't go for the one thrust beautiful finish. Cut someone 20 times and let them collapse from blood loss. Then finish them. Don't make it beautiful. You aren't making art, you're making corpses. And so the lessons continued. Physical action with a continuously running monologue. Each lesson summarized, demonstrated, and summarized again. In the study, never taste death. Every vial, every jar in here is death. If you're working with death, you'll get powders, pastes, and cells on your hands. Never lick the death on your fingers. Never touch death to your eyes. You'll wash your hands with this liquor, and then this water. Always into this basin, which is used for nothing else, and will only be emptied where I show you. Never taste death. On the street, embrace the shadows. Breathe the silence. Be ordinary. Be invisible. Mark the man. Know every out. When he made mistakes, Blint didn't yell. If Azos didn't block correctly, he was merely drawing his wage when the wood practice sword crashed into his shin. If he couldn't recite the lesson of the day and expand on any that Blint asked about, he got cuffed for every one he forgot. It was all even-handed. It was all fair. But Azos never relaxed. If he failed too much, just as passionately as Master Blint cuffed Azos, he might kill him. All it would take would be for Blint not to pull one blow short. Azos wouldn't even know he'd failed until he found himself dying. More than once he wanted to quit, but there were no quitting. More than once he wanted to kill Blint, but trying would mean death. More than once he wanted to cry, but he vowed he wouldn't. And he didn't. Mama Kay? Who's Vonda? Azoth asked. After his reading lessons, she took a cup of utai before they started on politics, history, and court etiquette. After he trained with Blint all morning, he studied with her through the afternoon. He was exhausted and sore all the time. But he slept through the whole of every night and woke warm, not shivering. The gnawing voice and debilitation weakness of hunger was only a memory. He never complained. If he did, they might make him go back. Mama Kay didn't answer immediately. That is a very delicate question. Does that mean you won't tell me? It means I don't want to. But I will, because you may need to know. And the man who should tell you won't. She closed her eyes for a moment, and when she continued, her voice was flat. Vonda was Durso's lover. Durso had a treasure, and Kalidor's God King wanted it. You remember what I taught you about Kalidor? Azoth nodded. Mama Kay opened her eyes and lifted her eyebrows. He grimaced, then recited. Kalidor is our northern neighbor. They've always said Cenaria and most of Mid-Suri is theirs. But they can't take it because Duke Geyer and his men guard Screaming Winds. The pass at Screaming Winds is highly defensible, Mama Kay suggested. And the prize? When Azoth looked at her blankly, she said, Kalidor could go around the mountains a long way, but they don't because we're really not worth it, and the Sarkage runs everything. Cenaria is corrupt. The treasure is empty. The Surans raid us from the south. And the Leynot holds our eastern lands. And they hate Kalidorians. Even more than they hate most mages. So yes, we are not worth taking. Isn't that what I said? You were right, but not for all the right reasons, she said. She sipped her utai again, and Azoth thought she'd forgotten his original question, or that she hoped he had. Then she said, to get Durso's treasure, the God King kidnapped Vonda and proposed a trade. The treasure for Vonda's life. Durso decided that his treasure was more important, so he let her die. But something happened, and Durso lost his treasure too. So Vonda died for no reason whatsoever. You're mad at him, Azoth said. Mama Kay's voice had no inflection whatever, and her eyes were dead. It was a great treasure, Azoth. If I were Durso, I might have done the same. Except for one thing. She looked away. Vonda was my little sister. Chapter 13. Solon caught the edge of the halberd with his long sword and heaved it aside, then stepped in and kicked one of the Logan's men in the stomach. A few years ago, that kick would have reached his helmet. He supposed he should be thankful that he could beat the Gaia's guards at all. But that was what came of having as his best friends as Prophet and a second echelon blade master. Bear would have words about how fat I've let myself get, and slow. My lord, Wendell North said, approaching the fighting men. Logan stepped away from a match he was losing, and Solon followed him. The steward gave Solon a flat stare, but didn't protest his presence. My lord, your mother has returned. Oh, where was she, Wendell? Master North? Logan asked. With the men, he did better, but acting the lord to a man who had probably been in charge of spanking him a few weeks ago was beyond Logan's right now. Solon didn't allow himself to grin, though. Let Lady Gaia undermine Logan's authority. He would have no part of that. She spoke with the Queen. Why? She put forth a petition for guardianship. What? Solon asked. She is asking the crown to appoint her to be Duchess until the Duke returns, or until my lord reaches the age of majority, which in this country, Master Tofusen, is 21. But we have my father's letter appointing me, Logan said. The king can't interfere with a house appointment unless they are guilty of treason. Wendell North pushed his glasses up his nose nervously. That is not altogether true, my lord. Solon looked back at the guards, who were beginning to quit sparring and drift closer. Back to it, dogs. They jumped to obey. The king may appoint a guardian to an underage lord if the previous lord of that house hasn't left the necessary provisions, Wendell said. It comes down to this. Your father left 2 copies of the letter appointing you lord in his absence. He gave one to your mother, the other to me. As soon as I heard where Lady Katrina went, I checked my copy, which I kept under lock and key. It's gone. Forgive me, Lord Gaia. The steward flushed. I swear I had no part in this. I thought I had the only key. What did the Queen say? Solon asked. Wendell blinked, as Solon had guessed. Wendell knew, but he hadn't wanted to let Solon know how extensive his network of eyes and ears was. After a moment, the steward said, the matter might have been handled fairly. Fairly easily, but the king doesn't just let the queen make any decisions without him. He interrupted them while they were speaking, he said that they would take the matter under advisement. I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. I'm afraid I do, Solon said. What? Logan asked. Who's your family's solicitor? I asked you first, Logan said. Boy, Count Rimbold Drake, Logan said. Sulking a little, it means we need to speak with Count Drake now. Do I have to wear the shoes? Asos asked. He didn't like shoes. Couldn't feel the ground to know how slick it was, and they pinched. Nah, we'll go see Count Drake with you wearing a nobleman's tunic and barefoot, Durso said. Really? No. For all the times Athos had envied the merchants and lords' sons at the markets, he'd never thought of how uncomfortable their clothes were. But Durso was his master now, and he was already impatient with him how long it was taking Athos to get ready. So Athos kept his mouth shut. He hadn't been Durso's apprentice for long, and he still worried the wet boy would throw him out. They walked across Vanden Bridge to the east side. To Azoth it was a revelation. He'd never even tried to cross Vanden Bridge and hadn't believed the gill rats who claimed to have made it past the guards. On the east side of the river there were no ruins, no empty buildings at all. There were no beggars on the streets. It smelled different, foreign, alien. Athos couldn't smell the manure of the cattle yard at all. Even the gutters were different. There was only one every third street, and none of the major streets. People didn't just throw their slops and sewage out the window and let them accumulate until they gradually flowed away. Here they carried them to the third street and dumped them there to flow down stone channels in the cobblestone streets, so that even those streets were safe to walk in. Most alarming, though, was that the people smelled wrong. Men didn't smell of sweat and on their labors. When a woman passed, she smelled only lightly of perfume, rather than overwhelmingly of it, with the stale of odors of sweat and sex laced underneath. Okay, Ginger, you take care, okay? And good luck, okay? When Athos asked Blint about it, the wet boy just said, "You're going to be a lot of work, aren't you?" They passed a white building that was billowing steam, glistening. Perfectly coiffed men and women were emerging. Athos didn't even ask. "It's a bathhouse," Blint said. "Another Suran import. The only difference is that here the men and women bathe separately. Except in Mama K's, of course." The owner of the Tipsy Tart greeted Blint as Master Tully. He answered her with an accent and effete attitude and ordered his carriage brought around. Once they were on their way, Azoth asked, "Where are we going? Who's Count Drake?" "He's an old friend, a noble who has to work for a living. He's a solicitor." When Azoth looked puzzled, Master Blint said, "A solicitor is a man who does worse things within the law than most crooks do outside it. But he's a good man. He's going to help me make you useful." Master, Azoth asked, how's Dolgo? She's not your problem anymore. You're not to ask about her again. A minute passed as the streets rolled by. Verso finally said, she's in bad shape, but she'll live. He said nothing more until they were shown into the Count's tiny estate. Count Drake was a kindly-looking man of perhaps 40. He had a pince nez tucked in a pocket of his vest, and he limped as he closed the door behind him and took a seat behind a desk piled high with stacks of papers. I never thought you'd take an apprentice, Durso. In fact, I seem to remember you swearing it. And swearing at great length, the Count said. And I still believe every word I said, Durso said gruffly. Ah, you are either being terrifically subtle or making no sense at all. My friend. Count Drake smiled, though Azoth could tell it was a real smile without malice or calculation. Despite himself, Durso smiled too. They've been missing you, Rimbold. Really? I wasn't aware of anyone shooting at me for some time, Durso laughed. And Athos almost fell out of his chair. He hadn't thought the wit boy was capable of laughter. I need your help, Durso said. All I have is yours. I want to make this boy new. What are you thinking? Count Drake asked, looking at Athos quizzically. A noble of some sort, relatively poor, the kind who gets invited to social events but doesn't attract attention. Count Drake said. The third son of a baron, then. He'll be upper nobility, but nobody important. Oh wait, an eastern baron. My second cousins live 2 days' ride beyond Havermere, and most of their land have been seized by the Ley Knot. So if you want an ironclad identity, we could make him a stern. That will do. First name? Count Drake asked Azoth. Azoth said, wait, what? First name, Count Drake asked Azoth. Azoth said. Holy moly, that was hard to read. Not your real name, son, the Count said. Your new name. Kylar, Durso said. The Count produced a piece of blank paper and put on the pince nez. How do you want to spell that? Kyler? Kiler. Durso spelled it, and the solicitor wrote it down. Count Drake grinned. Old jeering punning. You know me, Durso said. No, Durso, I don't think anyone does. Still kind of ominous, don't you think? It fits the life. For about the 100th time, Azoth felt like he was not simply a child, but an outsider. It seemed everywhere there were secrets that he couldn't know, mysteries he couldn't penetrate. Now it was just mute conversation with Mama Kay about something called a keikari, or sacage politics, or court intrigues, or magic, or creatures from the freeze that were imaginary but Durso insisted did exist, and others that he insisted didn't, or references to gods and angels that Blint wouldn't explain to him even when he did ask. Now it was his own name. ASOS was about to demand an explanation, but they were already moving on to other things. The Count said, "How soon do you need this, and how solid does it have to be?" "Solid. Sooner is better." "I thought so," the Count said. "I'll make it good enough that unless the real Sterns come here, no one will ever know." "Of course, you're still left with a rather significant problem. You have to train him to be a noble." "Oh, no, I don't," Durso said. "Of course you—" The Count trailed off. He clicked his tongue. "I see." He adjusted his pince nez and looked at ASOS. "When shall I take him?" "In a few months, if he lives that long. There are things I need to teach him first." Durso looked out the window. "Who's that?" "Ah," Count Drake said. "That is the young Lord Logangeyer. A young man who will make a fine duke one day." "No, the Sethi." "I don't know, haven't seen him before." "Looks like an advisor." Durso cursed. He grabbed ASOS' hand and practically dragged him out the door. "Are you ready to obey?" Durso demanded. ASOS nodded quickly. "See that boy?" "You call that a boy?" ASOS asked. The young man the Count had called Logangeyer wore a green cloak with black piping, fine black leather boots polished to a high sheen, a cotton tunic, and a sword. He was 20 paces from the door and was being shown in by a porter. His face looked young, but his frame made him look years older than ASOS. He was huge, already taller than ASOS, and would probably ever be, and thicker and wider than anyone he knew. And he didn't look fat. Where ASOS felt awkward and clumsy in his clothes, Logan looked comfortable, confident, handsome, lordly. Just looking at him made ASOS feel shabby. "Start a fight with him. Distract the Sethi until I can get out." "Logan!" a girl cried out from upstairs. "Sarah!" Logan called, looking up. ASOS looked at Master Brent, but he was gone. There were no time to say anything. It didn't matter whether he understood or not. There were mysteries he wasn't allowed to understand yet. He could only act or wait, obey or disobey. The porter opened the door and ASOS stepped back around the corner, out of sight. As Logan stepped inside and looked up the stairs, a smile curving his lips, ASOS stepped around the corner. They collided and ASOS landed on his back. Logan almost tripped over him, and Asos rolled to the side and caught Logan's foot in the stomach. Oof! Logan caught himself on the banister. I'm so sorry. You fat ape! Asos staggered to his feet, holding his stomach. You clumsy gutter shite, he cut off as he realized all the curses he knew would make him come as coming from the Warrens. I didn't, Logan said. What's going on? The girl asked from the top of the stairs. Logan looked up, a guilty look flashing across his face. Asos punched him in the nose. Logan's head rocketed back. Logan, the Sethi man shouted. But Logan's mild expression was gone. His face was a mask, intense but not furious. He grabbed Asos' cloak and lifted it off the ground. Asos panicked. He threw punches blindly, screaming, his fist crashing Logan's cheek and chin. Logan! Stop it! Logan shouted in Asos' face. Stop it! Asos went crazy, and Logan's intensity flashed into fury. He shifted his hands and held Asos off the ground with one, then buried his other fist in Asos' stomach once, twice. The wind rushed from Asos' lungs. Then a fist the size of a sledge flattened his nose, blinding him with instant tears and pain. Then, amid distant shouting, he felt himself being spun in a tight circle and briefly flying. Asos' head slapped against hardwood, and the well flashed bright. Chapter 14. Logan had insisted on going upstairs to help the Countess take care of young Kylar Stern. He was mortified, and apparently not solely because he lost his temper in front of Count Drake's pretty daughter. For Solon it had been an instructive 10 seconds. Count Drake and Solon were left alone. The Count led him to his office. Why don't you sit down? The Count said, taking his own seat behind his desk. Where are you from, Master Tofusen? It was either courtesy or bait, Solon chuckled. That's the first time I've been asked that question. He gestures to himself as is to say, just look at my skin. The Count said, I don't see any clan rings or any scars. Where they been removed? Well, not all Sethi wear the rings. I was under the distinct impression that they did, Count Drake said. What is this? What are you after? I'm curious about who you really are, Master Tofusen. Logan Geyer is not only a fine young man whom I regard almost as a son. He also suddenly the lord of one of the most powerful houses in the land. I've never seen you or heard of you, and suddenly you're his advisor? That strikes me as peculiar. I don't care that you are Sethai, if you are, but I've spent some time on Hokai and Togathu, and the only Sethai who don't pierce their cheeks are the exiles stripped of clan and family. But if you are on exile, you should have scars from your rings being torn out, and you have none. Your knowledge of our culture is admirable, but incomplete. I am of House Tofusen, Windseekers of the Royal House. My father's appointment was to Sho Sendai, an ambassador to the Red Mages. Yes, Sho Sendai accepts students from all over the world. As I had no magical talent, I received my education among the merchants and nobles, who are not as tolerant. Not having the rings made life a little easier. There's more to it than that, but I don't think the rest of my story is any of your business. Fair enough. What took you to Sath? Solon asked. Slavery, the Count said. Before I became fully part of the movement that finally ended slavery, here 7 years ago, I thought a more moderate path might work. I went to Hokai to see if I could learn ways to make slaves' lives better. From the small size of his house, which was very small for a noble, even one as low as a count, Solon knew that Count Drake hadn't been one of the slavers who felt guilty about his newfound wealth. He must have been a real crusader all along. It's totally different in Sath, Solon said. The year of joy changes everything. Yes, I advanced the idea here, even got the law passed. But the Sarkage immediately suborned it. Instead of every slave being freed on the 7th year, slaves were to be freed 7 years from the beginning of their indenture. The Sarkage claimed it was simpler, that it would be ridiculous to buy a slave in the 6th year and own them for only a month or a week. Of course, in practice, the Sarkage people kept the records so they were in your country the 7th year in full of celebration of every slave is freed. Here the years passed, and slaves were never freed. Slaves became slaves for life. They were beaten, scourged, given to the death games, their children sent to the baby farms. I've heard those became truly awful, Solon said. The Sarkage set them up, saying that they would be places where the children of prostitute might be redeemed. Slaves, true, but redeemed. It sounded good, but it gave us places like the House of Mercy. Sorry, I shouldn't go on. It was a dark time. Is that boy ever coming down? Maybe we should get started, Solon said. I don't think this will wait, and from the way Logan was looking at your daughter, they might be talking a while. The Count chuckled. Are you testing me now? Does Duke Gaia know? Yes, he and I are friends. Ragnar is loath to demand control of Logan's flirtations, given the circumstances of his own marriage. I'm not familiar with those. Can you enlighten me? Solon asked. It's not my place. Anyway. Loken and Sarah will grow out of it. What appears to be the problem? Katrina Geyer. Careful, the Count said. Did the Duke give you letters that declared his son Lord Geyer in his absence? He spoke of it, but he had to leave quickly. He said his steward would bring them. Lady Geyer has stolen the letters and destroyed them. Then she went to the Queen. She went to whom? The Count was astonished. Is that unusual? They have no love for each other. What happened? Count Drake asked. Lady Geyer asked to be made Logan's guardian. The king overheard them. He came in and said he would take it under advisement. What does that mean? Count Drake removed his pince-nez and rubbed the bridge of his nose. It means that if he acts quickly, he can appoint a guardian for Logan. Will Katrina Geyer do such a poor job? Solon asked. Count Drake sighed. Legally, the king can put anyone in Logan's place that he wants so long as they relate to him, which means almost anyone in the nobility. And once he's got a guardian in place, even Regnus won't be able to rescind the appointment. Katrina has just delivered House Geyer to the king. But you're Duke Geyer's solicitor, and he told you his wishes. Doesn't that carry out any weight? Solon asked. If the king were interested in the truth, yes. As is, to save the Geyers, we need the Geyer family parchment, the Duke's great seal, and a reckless willingness to forge a state document. The king holds court in half an hour. I'd guess this will be the first item on the agenda. There's just no time. Solon cleared his throat and produced a roll of heavy parchment and a large seal. Count Drake grinned and snapped the parchment. I think I suddenly like you, Master Tofusen. Wendell North helped me with the wording, Solon said. I thought I'd leave the signature and the seal to you. Count Drake rummaged through his desk, found a letter from the Duke, and laid it on top of the writ of guardianship. With quick, sure strokes, he forged the Duke's signature flawlessly. Count Drake looked up guiltily and said, Let's just call it an artifact of misspent youth. Solon dribbled sealing wax on the parchment, then here to misspent youth. Next time you'll move, Blind said, as Athos groaned his way back into consciousness. I don't think I'll ever move again. My head feels like someone threw it against the wall. Blind laughed. The second time Athos had heard him do that recently. He was sitting on the edge of Athos' bed. You did well. They thought you were embarrassed because you got knocked down in front of Drake's daughter. So they decided it was all harmless kid stuff. The young Lord Geyer was mortified that he hit you. Apparently, he's a real big friendly giant, never loses his temper. The fact you're about a quarter of his size and Sarah was furious with him also helps. They were all quite impressed. Impressed? That's stupid. In their world, fighting has rules. So fighting means risking embarrassment and pain, and at worst risking your looks if you get a broken nose, or an unfortunate scar. It doesn't mean dying or killing. In their world, you can fight a man and then become his friend. In fact, you're going to play it so, Logan, doesn't... Try again. In fact, you're going to play it so Logan does become your friend. Because with a man like him, you can only come out of this as a great friend or a terrible enemy. Do you understand that, Kylar? We'll work together on your new identity soon. Yes, sir. So why didn't you want Master Tofusion to see you? That's why you made me fight Logan, isn't it? To be a distraction. Solon Tofusion is a magus. Most magi. That's male mages. Can't tell you if you're talented just by looking at you. On the other hand, most magi, female mages, can. There are disguises against their sight that I'll teach you later, but I didn't have the time to do it, and I didn't feel like going upstairs and jumping out of a window. Azoth was confused. But he doesn't act like a mage, and how would you know? Durzo asked. Jason didn't think saying he isn't like the mages in stories was going to please Durzo. Wait, what? I'm bad at reading today. Azoth didn't think saying he isn't like the mages in stories was going to please Durzo. Okay, that way. The truth is, Durzo said, Solon hasn't told Logan or anyone else that he's a mage, and you won't tell anyone either. When you know a man's secrets, you have power over him. A man's secrets is his weaknesses. Every man has a weakness, no matter. Master Blint's voice dropped to nothing, his eyes suddenly distant, lifeless. He stood and left without a word. Azoth closed his eyes, confused. He wondered about his new master. He wondered about the guild. He wondered if Jalil had bought Review. He wondered how Jarl was doing. Most of all, he wondered about Dolgo. Heyo, Azo. Hey ho, J.O., Azoth said, even as he gave the words the same stress he always had. Azoth felt part of him die. This was supposed to be one of his last outings as Azoth soon. Soon he would have to become Kylar. He would walk differently, talk differently. He wouldn't even visit his old neighborhoods in the Warrens. But now he saw that Azoth's world was already dying, that he would never connect with Jarl again. It had nothing to do with the lies Kylar would tell, and everything to do with Wrath. It was different now. It always would be. Azoth and Yael looked at each other for a long moment in the common room of Mama Kay's house. It was almost midnight, and the gill rats would soon be shooed out of the house. They were welcome in the common room all day, but they were allowed to sleep here only in the winter, and then only if they obey her rules. No fighting, no stealing, no going anywhere but the kitchen and the common room, and no bothering the adults who visited. Any gill rat who broke the rules got his entire gill banned from Mama Kay's for the winter. Usually, it was a death sentence for the offender, because it meant the whole gill would have to sleep in the sewers to stay warm, and they will kill him for that. Still, the place was always crowded. There was a fireplace, and a floor covering with soft rugs, good for sleeping. For sleeping on. Those rugs had once been clean, but they were now stained from their filthy bodies. Despite the damage, Mama Kay never got mad at them. And every few months, new rugs showed up. There were durable chairs the gill rats were allowed to sit on, toys, dolls, and piles of games they could play. Sometimes Mama Kay even brought them treats. Here they gambled and bragged and gossiped freely with anyone who was here, even children outside their own guild. It was the only place the gill rats were allowed to resemble children. It was the only safe place they knew. Coming back, it looked different. What had seemed so recently the very lap of luxury now was just a plain room, with plain furnishing and simple toys, because the gill rats would ruin anything better. They would stain everything and break anything delicate, not from malice, but from ignorance. The place was the same. It was Azoth who had changed. Azoth, or Kylar, whichever he was, marveled at the stench of the gill rats. Didn't they smell themselves? Weren't they ashamed? Or was it just him, ashamed of what he'd been? As he always did after his reading lesson with Mama Kay, Azoth had you look for Jarl. But now that they were face to face, neither could find anything to say. I need your help, Azoth said finally. There were no way to cover what he wanted. He wasn't here to visit a friend, he was here to do a job. My help? I need to know what's happened to Dolga. Where is she? And I need to know what's happening with the guilds. I guess you wouldn't know. No, guilds weren't part of his life now. Nothing was like it used to be. Your master hit you? Jarl asked, looking at Azoth's black eye. I got this in a fight. He does hit me, but not like... Azoth cut off. Not like Rat. How is he? Azoth said, trying to cover. Why don't you tell me? You're the one who killed him. Azoth opened his mouth, but seeing two littles in Mama Kay's front room stopped. Flint made you kill Rat to see if you could do it, didn't he? Jarl asked, his voice low. No, are you crazy? In his head, he could hear the echoes of Master Blint's voice from their training. Word gets out. Word always gets out. Hurt filled Jarl's eyes, and he said nothing for a long time. I shouldn't push, Azoth, I'm sorry. I should just thank you. Rat, he messed me up bad. I'm so confused all the time. I hated him, but sometimes, when Rat disappeared and I saw you walking away with Blint. Jarl blinked rapidly and stared away. Sometimes I hate you. You left me with no one. But that's not right. You didn't do anything wrong. Just Rat. And me. Azoth didn't know what to say. Jarl blinked furiously again. Shut up, Jarl, shut up. He dashed the tears away from his eyes with fists. What do you need? There was something Azoth should say, he knew it. Some assurance he should give. But he didn't know what it was. Jarl had been his friend. Was his friend. Wasn't he? But he changed. Azoth had changed. He was supposed to be Kylon now, but instead, he was just a fraud straddling two wells and trying to hold on as they tore apart. Whatever the cataclysm named Rat had left Azoth holding on to, one thing was certain. A chasm had opened between him and Jarl, and Azoth was afraid to even approach it. Didn't understand what it was. Didn't know anything except that it made him feel dirty and scared. Jarl was letting him put the walls back up by asking him simple questions. Oh, asking his simple question. A simple question that could be answered simply. A problem that they could actually resolve. Dolgel, Azoth said. He felt relieved to back away from his once friend, and guilty that he felt relieved. Oh, Jarl said, you know she got... Is she all right now? She's alive. But I don't know if she's going to make it. They make fun of her. Without you around, she isn't like she used to be. I've been sharing my food with her, but the guild's falling apart. Things are too bad. We don't have enough food. The guild, not our guild. Azoth kept his face blank. Refused to show how much that hurt. It shouldn't have hurt. But he was the one who wanted out. He was the one who left. But it still made him feel empty. You will be alone. You will be different. Always. Jalil's almost dead. Turns out Rat stole his review money. And now they lost the waterfront to Burning Men, and others are closing in. They? Jarl's face twisted. If you got to know, they threw me out of Black Dragon. Threw us all out. Didn't want buggers and rat lovers, they said. You don't have a guild? Asos asked. It was a disaster. Guild rats without a guild were fair game for anyone. That Jarl had stayed alive since being expelled was surprising. That he had food to share with Dolgirl was amazing. And that he was willing to was humbling. Some of us had banded together for a little while. They call us the Buggers. I'm going to try to join Two Fist on the north side. Rumor is they might get market on Durdon soon, Jarl said. That was Jarl. Always had a plan. They're willing to take Dolgirl too? He answered with guilty silence. I asked. I did, Asos. They just won't do it. If you... Jarl's mouth opened to say more, then closed. I'm not going to make you ask, Jarl. I've been looking for you to give it back. Asos lifted his tunic and unwrapped his sash full of coins. He handed it to Jarl. Asos, this is twice as heavy as it was. I'll take care of Dolgirl. Give me a couple of weeks. Can you take care of her for that long? Jarl's eyes were filling with tears, and Asos was afraid his would too. They called each other Jarl and Asos now, not Jo and Azo. Asos said, I'm going to tell Mama Kay how smart you are, and see if she has work for you. You know, if things don't work out with Two Fist. You'd do that for me? Sure, Jo. Azo? Jarl said. Yeah. Jarl hesitated, swallowed. I just wish. Me too, Jarl. Me too. Chapter 15. The price of disobedience is death. The words kept running through his head every day as Athos planned his disobedience. Athos' training was brutally hard, but it wasn't brutal. In the guilds, a fist might beat you to make a point, and make a mistake that left you permanently maimed. Master Brent never made mistakes. Athos hurt exactly as much as Brent wanted him to. Usually, that was a lot. But so what? Athos had 2 meals a day. He could eat as much as he wanted. And Brent worked the soreness out of his muscles every day as they trained. At first, everything was curses and beatings. Athos couldn't do anything right. But curses were just air, and beatings were just momentarily pain. Brent would never maim Athos, and if he chose to kill him, there was nothing Athos could do to stop him anyway. It was the closest thing to safety he'd ever known. Within weeks, he realized he liked the training, the sparring, the blunted practice weapons, the obstacle courses, even the herb lore. Learning reading with Mama Kay was hard, but so what? 2 hours of frustration a day was nothing. Athos' life was good. Within a month, he realized that he was talented. It wasn't obvious, and if he hadn't been so keyed in to Master Blind's every mood and reaction, he would never have noticed. But now and then, he'd seen a faint look of surprise as he mastered some new skill more quickly than Master Blind had expected. It made him work all the harder, hoping to see that look not once a week, but once a day. For her part, Mama Kay made him decipher squiggles for longer than he could imagine. She had a way of smiling and saying just the right thing, that it pulled him along through the hours. Words were power, she said. Words were another sword for the man who wielded them well. And he would need them if he would need them if the world was to believe he was Kyler Stern. So Mama Kay worked with him on his alternate identity, quizzing him with likely questions other nobles would ask, helping him come up with harmless stories about growing up in Eastern Scenaria, and teaching him the rudiments of etiquette. She told him Count Drake would teach him the rest once he went to live with the Drakes. When Azoth walked in the Drake's door, she said, he would be Kylar forever. Blint would train him in a safe house on the east side. Mama Kay would meet him in one of her homes on the east side. Only when he started accompanying Blint on jobs would he return to the Wardens. Azoth worked hard for her, and without complaint, except for one time when he got disgusted of his own stupidity and threw a book across the room. He worked in the hell of Mama Kay's displeasure for a week until he brought her some flowers he'd stolen and she forgave him. Can always soften a woman's heart with flowers, guys. He'd given Jarl plenty of money to take care of Doll Girl, but Jarl wouldn't be able to just give her the money. Someone would steal it. The worst part of it was that she was alone, mute and with a horribly beaten face. She wouldn't be making any friends either. No. They wilt and die, and that is the expression women want. Is that the expression? Like, you do know that women will always like flowers. So if you go out and buy a bouquet of flowers and give it to Michelle, she would be pleased. Wait, the law is here? Shit. Actually, the law is here, guys. Plastic ones I can recycle. Oh no. Oh no. Ay, 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 ay. I'm just gonna read this chapter and finish. Okay, Craig? The price of disobedience is death, Master Blind had said. And he'd forbidden him to see Doll Girl again, ever. Mama Kay told Azoth that Master Blind would eventually come to like him and trust him. But that, when he said things like that, for now Azoth should take it as law. What is it with law? That made Azoth hopeful, until she clarified street law, which was immutable and omnipotent, not the pathetic king's law. It was a shame, because Azoth had to see Doll Girl one last time. When he did get his chance, it was through the no guile of his own. Master Blint had a job, so he simply left Azoth to his own devices. He left a list of chores too, but Azoth knew that if he hurried he could finish all the chores and still had several hours before he was supposed to meet with Mama Kay for his reading lessons. He threw himself into his work with a fury. He dusted the weapons room, climbed up a ladder to reach the higher rows of weapons and the equipment out of his reach. He checked and cleaned the wood practice weapons. He oiled and cleaned the weapons Master Blint had used recently. He worked a different kind of oil into the leather targets and dummies that Master Blint made him attack by the hour. He checked the seams on the ones Master Blint himself had kicked, and finding several bursts, sewed them shut again. He wasn't very good with a needle, but Master Blint tolerated less than perfect work here, if nowhere else. He swept the floor and, as always, didn't throw the dirt out into the street, but collected it in a small bin. Master Blint didn't want him to leave the safe house, not ever, unless he was under direct orders. He found himself cleaning one of Blint's daggers a second time. It was a long, thin blade with tiny gold filigree. Through chance of or age, the gold was thin in the grooves that had been etched for it, so blood had collected in every narrow groove of the filigree. Blint had used this blade recently, and he must have been in a hurry when he sheathed it. So Azoth found himself using the point of another fine dagger to pick out the blood. He should have soaked the blade in water and then scrubbed it vigorously, but this was his last chore. It was still 3 hours until he was supposed to be at Mama Kay's. If he had to work on chores until then, it wouldn't be his fault that he didn't leave. What happens if you do nothing? Blint had asked him. Nothing. There's a price. A terrible freedom to that, boy. Remember it. Master Blint had been speaking of making your move on a debtor when things look risky. But Azoth could feel the burden of those words now. If I do something, what's the worst that could happen? Master Blint kills me. That was pretty bad. The odds of it were low, though. Unlike other wet boys who might spend their whole lives in the warrens, Master Blint only took jobs from people who could afford his prices. That usually meant nobles. That always meant East Side. So he'd be on the opposite side of the city from Azoth. The real worst case, if I do nothing, Doll Girl dies. He put down the dagger with a grimace. Finding Doll Girl was easier said than done. The Black Dragon Guild had ceased to exist. It was just gone. Kylar went to their old territory and found that it had been swallowed by Red Hand, Burning Man, and Rusty Knife. The old black dragons scrawled on buildings and aqueducts were already fading. He wore a pair of daggers, but he didn't have to use them. Once he was stopped by some burning men, but one of the bigs used to be one of his lizards, the boy spoke a few words to the others who were about to try to rob ASOS, and they eased away. The lizard never said a word to him. He crisscrossed their old territory half a dozen times, but he never found Dalgo. Once he thought he saw Corbin Fishhill. Someone he'd always known was important, and who he now knew, Master Blint had told him, was one of the 9. But all the gill rats he saw kept their distance. Time was running out when ASOS finally thought of the old bakery. Dalgo was there alone. She had her back to him, and for a moment he paused, afraid to get her attention. Then she turned. Rat's sadism was evident. A month hadn't been long enough for her wounds to heal. It had only been long enough to show both that her face must have looked like for the last weeks, and what it would look like for the rest of her life. Rat had beaten her first, just beat her into submission or unconsciousness. Then he'd taken a knife to her face. One deep cut looped from the corner of her left eye to the corner of her mouth. It had been stitched with dozens of tiny stitches, but the resulting scar would tug corner of Dalgo's mouth up to an unnatural grin forever. The other cheek bore a broad X-shaped cut, which were matched again by a smaller X across her lips in front. Eating, smiling, frowning, moving her mouth at all must have been excruciating. One of her eyes was still swollen, and ASOS wasn't sure she'd ever be able to see out of it again. The rest of the wounds looked like they would fade. A scab on her forehead, the barrow's yellow around her eyes as the black faded, and a nose that must have been reset because ASOS was sure Rat had broken it. All in all, her face was, and was supposed to be, a testament to cruelty. Rat wanted anyone who ever looked at Dalgo to know that she hadn't just had an accident. He wanted everyone to know that this had been done deliberately. For a moment, ASOS wished Rat's death had been even more horrible. Then time seemed to start again. He was staring at Dalgo, staring at his friend's face with open horror. Her eyes, that had been so full of surprise and sudden hope, brimmed full with tears. She covered herself and turned away, crying silently, her thin shoulders shaking. He sat next to her. I came as soon as I could. I've got a master now, and I had to disobey him just to be here. But I couldn't leave you here. Things have been bad, huh? She started sobbing. He could just imagine the names they must have called her. Sometimes he wanted to kill everyone in the Warrens. How could they make fun of Dalgo? How would they hurt her? It was a miracle she was still alive. A miracle. And Jarl. Jarl must have risked his life a dozen times. ASOS scooted over and pulled her close. She turned and clung to him as if her tears would wash her away. He held her and cried. Time passed. Asos felt like he'd been squeezed dry. He wasn't sure how long he'd held her, but he knew it had been too long. I have good news, he told her. She looked up at him with those big brown eyes. Come with me, he said. Dolgo followed him out of the Warrens, over the Vanden Bridge and to Count Drake's. Her eyes widened as they headed towards the Count House, and further when the old porter opened the door for Azoth and showed them in. Count Drake was in his office. He rose and ushered them in, somehow not even registering surprise at how awful Dolgo's face looked. He was a better person than Azoth. Has Azoth told you why you're here, young lady? The Count asked. The name was a deliberate choice. Azoth saw Dolgo was part of Azoth's life. She wouldn't be part of Kylar's. She wasn't going to know his new name. Dolgo shook her head shyly, clinging to Azoth. We found a family for you, Dolgo, Count Drake said. They want you to come and be their daughter. They're going to take care of you. You'll never have to sleep on the streets again. They serve in a house here on the east side. If you don't want to, you never have to go back to the Warrens ever again. Of course, it had all been a little more involved than that. Count Drake had known the family for some time. They have taken in other slave-born orphans over the years, but couldn't afford to feed another. So Azoth has sworn that he would provide for her out of his wages, which were already generous, and which Master Blint had told him would increase as he became more useful. Count Drake hadn't been enamored of keeping any secrets from Master Blint, but after Azoth had explained what had happened, he'd been willing to help. Dolgo clung to Azoth, either not understanding or not believing what the Count had just said. Count Drake stood. Well, I'm sure you have some things you probably wish to tell her, and I need to get the coach in order, so if you'll excuse me. He left them alone, and Dolgo looked at Azoth with accusing eyes. You never were dumb, he said. She squeezed his hand hard. My master ordered me not to see you. Today is the last time we ever get to see each other. She tugged on his hand, face pugnacious. Yes, ever, he said. I don't want it to be this way, but he'll kill me if he finds out I defied him even this much. I'm sorry. Please don't be mad at me. She was crying again, and there was nothing he could do. I have to go now. He might be back any time. I'm sorry. He tore his eyes from her and stepped towards the door. Don't leave me. The voice sent a lance of ice down his spine. He turned incredulously. It was the little girl's voice. Exactly like you would expect if you didn't know Dolgo was a mute. Please, Dolgo said. It was a pretty voice. Incongruous coming out of the beaten mask of a face Rat had left her. Asa's eyes filled with tears again, and he ran out of the door. Straight into someone tall and lean, and as hard as if he'd been cut out of a solid rock. Asos fell on his butt and stared up in horror. Master Blind's face was purple with fury. "You dare!" he shouted. "After all I've done for you, you defy me. I just killed one of the 9, and what do? You walk around the killing ground for 2 hours so everyone knows Blind's apprentice was there. You may have cost me everything." He swept Asos off the ground as if he were a kitten and hit him. Asos' tunic tore in Blind's hand as he fell back from the force of the blow. But Blind came forward, and this time his closed fist crashed against Asos' jaw. Asos' face rebounded off the count's floor, and he barely saw Doll Girl flying at Master Blind as the huge black sword cleared its sheath. "Don't hurt her," Athos shouted, insanely. He threw himself at Blind and grabbed Retribution's blade. But Athos was a force of nature. But Blind was a force of nature. He didn't even slow as he scooped Olga up and deposited her in the hole. He locked the door, unlocked it, and relocked it in a rapid succession. He turned back to Athos, but whatever he was about to say died. The great black sword was still locked in Athos' hand, cutting to the bone, except that now it wasn't black. The blade was glowing blue. Incandescent blue fire surrounded Athos' hand, burning cold into his cut fingers, spreading down the blade. "No, not that. It's mine," Blind cried. He flung the sword aside as if it was an adder, away from both of them. If there had been fury in his eyes before, now it turned into absolute unreasoning rage. Athos didn't even see the first blow. He didn't even know how he reached the floor again. Something wet and sticky was blocking out his vision. Then the world faded into repeated heavy blows and exploding light, and pain, and the sharp, gargly breath of Master Blind, and distant shouting and banging on a door that seemed further and further away. That, guys, were the end of chapter 16. Wow. That was unexpected. I expected that he would run into someone, but not those so Blind. But yet again, guys, we have now reached the end of the reading time with Mama Raiden. So, I would like to say thank you again for being here with me. It is always a pleasure. Thank you so much for the 150 biddies, Loctavian. I really appreciate you. Thank you to OG the Assassin for resubbing. To J Cliff for raiding. And I will see you guys later tonight at 8:30 p.m. Central European Time. Well, CST, I better say. It's still summertime. For some ESO action. We're gonna do that. And thank you for today, guys. And I think we are gonna raid off to Lady Cup. She's playing ESO on PS4.
Oh, the cliff shade one, that's so pretty. You just answered me exactly as I was thinking it. That's
So
really
guys,
pretty.
please stick around for
Yes,
the
8
raid.
minutes, please. Can we do 20, please?
And
So I can get
let's
a few more giveaways
go
in that way, 'cause we are halfway through.
raid off to Lady Cup. She is a great streamer and a dear friend of mine. So get ready, guys, to do some copy pasta. I will see you guys later
We'll just make
tonight.
Sure this is all done.
Take care. Remember, I love you. Mwah.
Do, 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 do. Don't know why I've got that